for the first time. Okay.
We're live. It's Jimmy Hosteller. It's AJ McGraw. We're here. We're going to talk some fantasy football.
I do want to point out at DukelJDean on Twitter and at DukelAJM on Twitter.
That's it. I had to relinquish the Dukel Champ Twitter handle last year. I'm still sad by that. But I passed it on to a punk. Passed it on to Austin, who's gonna just disgrace the Twitter handle this year. But
well, AJ, why don't you to explain that a little bit better? Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about our league and our fame and fortunes that we've come into?
The names and fortune of the Dukel Crown Fantasy League. Yeah. So about 3 years ago, I was talking with Jimmy one day about hey, we want to make a fantasy league that's the best league that you can make. And one of those leagues that everyone participates in, people care about the rules, people update their teams, they want to trade, all that stuff. And so we talked about if we could get 10 guys who would really commit to it, and we got 10 guys, and then we kicked one out, and then we got another 10th guy, and then we kicked him out, and then we got a real 10th guy. And so we have this league. It's called the Dukel Crown Fantasy Football League. There's 10 of us. We're alumni from Virginia Pi, which is a Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity down at Christopher Newport. And anyway, so we take it way too seriously. We all made Twitter handles so we could talk to each other during the day.
It's famed Twitter handles.
Yeah, themed, exactly. And it's really like the Dungeons and Dragons of fantasy football. is we have made a clan of nerds who, are going to keep their own statistics, going to make their own prop bets each week. This is stupid stuff. We are really just...
Come on, AJ. You're selling it short. It's 2012. We're like the World of Warcraft of
That's true.
Fantasy.
League of Legends, maybe.
Mr. T plays World of Warcraft.
And I know that because I still have friends who are not college graduates but are my age and spend hours on hours on hours playing World of Warcraft type games. Anyways, let's get into fantasy. So the big topic for me, the one that really sticks out for me in my mind, is just this paradigm shift we've seen in the league these first 2 weeks. Last year, we saw the NFL. We saw 3 5,000-yard passers. We saw a ton of 4,000-yard passers. We saw records being broken, passing records being broken. And we really established this year our big 2 quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and after that, 3 other guys we thought, you could really trust, Drew Brees, Matt Stafford, and depending on whether you like him or not, Cam Newton. And after 2 weeks, what we've seen out of those 5 guys is diddly. We've seen nothing. What's the cause?
So it's important to note that whenever we're talking about statistics, we are going to be basing it on our fantasy football league, which is not standard scoring. We do 6-point touchdown passes and 3-point interceptions, so it does increase our scores a little bit. We're also half-point PPR, so that's factored in when talking about our stats. So if we don't line up with your traditional standard scoring league on any of the sites, that's why the rankings should all be relatively similar, but just keep that in mind.
Jimmy, listen to this. Here's a list of names of quarterbacks who are outscoring Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. Here are some names: Alex Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Carson Palmer, Sam Bradford, Matt Castle, Robert Griffin III, my boy, my lover, my best friend in the world, RG3, leading the fantasy league in scoring, 60 points so far in our league. What's going on?
You have to. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, you look at someone like Tom Brady, and you think, admittedly having not watched a lot of snaps of those games, but the word on the street is that their offensive line is just really, really bad right now. Tom Brady in his first game, let me just pull up some stats real quick, had 21.5 fantasy points. I mean, he wasn't a schmuck the first week. Dropped to 15 last week when they didn't get a running game going. They didn't get a passing game going. Just kind of anemic, and a lot of that stems from his offensive line. He doesn't have time to throw like he would like to.
The Arizona Cardinals, though, Jimmy, this guy has now just one of the top tight ends in the league now that Aaron Hernandez, my other boy, is out for about 6 weeks. But he had those two guys. He's got Wes Welker, that's his best friend. He can complete passes with that guy all day. He's got the new guy, Brandon Lloyd, who was supposed to be just this revelation to the league. He was supposed to change the face of the Patriots and get Brady to 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns without even thinking about it. And against the Arizona Cardinals, he has one touchdown pass. One.
Yeah, I mean, again, the Arizona Cardinals aren't schmucks. That's a defense that's playing really well right now.
Right.
That's really strong right now. Seattle, for having a rookie quarterback starting and all that they're worth, I mean, they took Seattle down to the wire. But Seattle's a team a lot of people think are really good this year. And I tend to agree. I think Seattle's not a bad team this year. Look at what they did to the Cowboys.
It sure showed them, right?
But Arizona put it to Seattle, held Seattle to a close game, kept it close, and this game was close. I mean, a bad 2-point conversion in this game. If that 2-point conversion is successful, this game's tied, and who knows? We may be talking about how Tom Brady is the creme de la creme of fantasy quarterbacks this year.
So listen, I have a lot of man crushes. I've already talked about two of them. And my biggest one in the writing world is Bill Simmons, right? And he made a really great point that I'm going to repeat and pretend is my own. And here it is. Tom Brady, if you take away Super Bowl rings, which he had who knows how many years ago now, it seems like forever, right? Not really been a clutch quarterback for a couple of years now, right? He's lost a lot of really close playoff games. He overthrows Wes Welker last year to lose to the Giants, and Simmons was. If you flipped Romo and Brady, and you put Brady where Romo's at right now, are we grilling this guy? I mean, he's what? He's almost 35. He's clearly tailing off a little bit. It seems early in the season. Is it about time to write off Tom Brady?
I don't think that you can write him off. I just think there's two. I mean, he's Tom Brady, and that name's going to carry clout. He's one of the better quarterbacks, definitely one of the best quarterbacks of this era. You look at, like, Peyton Manning, who's a different story. You look at Drew Brees, you look at Tom Brady, and now you start to look at Aaron Rodgers, who a lot of people were saying was the best player in the NFL, which I think, maybe after 2 weeks and the kind of performance that he's put out there, maybe that can be reconsidered. But it's Tom Brady. It's a name that is going to carry clout, and you're always going to look for reasons around Tom Brady to excuse Tom Brady's poor performance. You're going to look at, now Hernandez being hurt, though he had him for a game, or actually being hurt for most of that game. You're going to look at, Josh McDaniels coming back. Is that part of the reason? He's sort of decided that Wes Welker's not his guy and doesn't care about him. And for all intents and purposes, the Patriots decided that last year when they decided to franchise Wes Welker. You would think Welker being in a contract year that he would step up and be the guy, but it's very possible they're not calling his number because they don't want to have to cut a guy and that's been performing. They don't want to lose a guy that's performing well. That's been sort of their go-to guy. They want to show that he's tailing off and that it makes sense that they don't keep him. But I honestly think that Wes Welker is going to make some fantasy owners very happy next year on another team.
That is quite the prediction, and I disagree with it. But I think this. I think I put a lot of chips in the Aaron Hernandez basket this year. I heard a lot in the offseason about how he was going to have a great year. He was the guy in New England this year. They were going to feature him in the offense, and I got so excited. If you remember last year, he was running the ball out of the backfield. This guy was doing everything. Super athletic, tall, has great hands. He's like Jimmy Graham, but with Rob Gronkowski on the other side of the ball. Right?
Sure.
And I put a lot of stock in Aaron Hernandez. And the only guy that benefits, I think, is Wes Welker now because they have to play him. Aaron Hernandez is out. They have a huge gap now at their other tight end spot, which they love to feature. They just signed Kellen Winslow, which, come on,
it's a joke.
It's a body. They have Vishante Shanko, one of my favorite names in the NFL, on that team as well. But I don't think either of those guys are going to have a significant impact. Maybe if you're in one of those really deep leagues, and you want a flyer, and all those new guys like Martellus Bennett, Dennis Pitta, those guys are gone. Owen Daniels, who I think is kind of a sneaky play right now, especially if you're in a PPR league. Yeah. He seemed to bounce back after his ACL 2 years ago. He's not a sexy play, but he's going to catch 5 or 6 balls a week, maybe 50 to 80 yards. You hope for a touchdown. But hey, in a PPR league, that's looking at double-digit points there. And I think that's kind of a sneaky play. But Wes Welker benefits from Aaron Hernandez going out. You saw he got a lot more run last week. Saves our boy Sam Persons, who has Wes Welker on his team in our league, saves him because Welker was just a huge gaping hole in the starting lineup, and now he's going to get a lot of run. Listen,
Well,
if you're me and you're starting Matt Stafford, are you hitting the panic button?
No, I'm not hitting the panic button.
Matt Stafford in week 1 in our league against 6-point touchdowns, minus 3-point turnovers, any turnover. Matthew Stafford in week 1 had 14 fantasy points. And in this last week, I think he had 11. I'm trying to pull it up here. Of course, I'm freezing up on this.
Yeah, of course. Everything. Technology is what it is. We're still going to be ironing out kinks for a little while. And plus dealing with ads on some of these sites that we're using to pull our stats. We don't have a stats team yet, so please send in your applications to be our intern.
So Stafford had 14 points week 1, right? 13 points week 2. Remember in week 1 he threw those 3 picks early, almost had a 4th. He looked bad. Are you hitting the panic button if you're a Stafford owner? Because I'm getting nervous, Jimmy. I got to be honest. I'm getting nervous.
I'm looking at this. I'm looking. They played the Rams week 1, and the Rams aren't a good team, but the Rams are a gutty team. Jeff Fisher comes in, puts in a new defensive system. They get Cortland Finnegan, who, for being the biggest punk and maybe the dirtiest guy in the NFL, the worst dude in the NFL.
The Rams are not a good team. The Rams are a horrible, cheating, maligning, evil, dirty, scumbag team. And for all intents and purposes, should be banned from the league for a year. Give them the Goodell ban because what they did to my Redskins last week was unacceptable. But I digress. Go ahead and take it.
Yeah, either way. So they cheated and dirtied up the game against the Lions as well. The Lions then played the best team in the league in the 49ers. I think that's pretty clear. There's not money. There's no other team you can put in front of the 49ers right now, in my opinion, both on defense and offense. Then the Lions had to face up against them in the Handshake Bowl too, whatever you want to call it. Look, Matthew Stafford has faced some decent in St. Louis and really good in the 49ers defenses. Calvin Johnson is still on that team, and that dude, he's going to see a lot of double coverage. And it's up to Nate Burleson and Titus Young to come back and get those catches and get open to give Stafford the fantasy points and the opportunities that we expect him to have. I still have concern. He made it all through last year. I still have concern about his health. He's taken a couple shots that I've seen that have been a bit rough. The 49ers are a hard-hitting team. Taking those shots early, hopefully that means he has some time once they hit their bye to recover, make it through the rest of the year. But you've got to look at the pieces there. Brandon Pettigrew has not been a slouch this year. He's been pretty decent. I'm looking
absolutely.
Just quickly. He's top 10-ish in our league. 20 fantasy points in our league for Perry. 10 and 9. He's averaging about 10 points a game, which isn't bad for a tight end. Calvin Johnson will be Calvin Johnson. You just got to give him time. I don't think there's a Madden curse to this. I don't think any of that. He just needs some time. He's going to have to get his legs under him and get going. And the team is going to face some softer competition. They'll face the Packers. The Packers do not have a good pass defense. They can get pressure, but not the kind of pressure they got against Jay Cutler. Calvin Johnson will have his opportunities to make plays. And
we're going to talk about this later, but the Lions are playing the Tennessee Titans next week, or this week rather. And I think we see a little bounce back here, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Titus Young has been kind of a big disappointment from a lot of people. Saw him as a sleeper.
I am one of those people. I am absolutely.
Do we hold out on Titus Young for a little bit? Do we maybe stash him on the bench and hope as the season goes on we see a little more as once Stafford rights the ship?
Well, and this is a problem that I've had this week is I have Titus Young, who again in our league a half-point PPR is 4.6 points on the year, 3 in the first game, 1.6. There was word that there were some immaturity issues with him on the team, that Jim Schwartz wasn't pleased with some of the immaturity that he showed.
You're telling me
And
a 23-year-old NFL player might have some maturity issues?
I, well, that's right. But I think if you look at it, let's ask this question: Do you? I haven't again. I can look up the stats real fast, but Nate Burleson, I think, is not doing anything either as the other guy. They're going to have to. One of those guys is going to have to step up and give Calvin Johnson some help if Matthew Stafford is going to bounce back. And I think Tennessee is really bad right now. Tennessee is not a good team in any way. I think I'd probably put them in the bottom 10, if not bottom 5 in the league right now.
Well, they clearly have no running game. If you're a Chris Johnson owner, you are seeing if there's anyone in your league that is not paying attention, you're trying to ship that guy off. You're trying to sell that name and say, hey, you want Chris Johnson, man? I'll give him to you for whatever you want. But otherwise, you're stashing him on your bench, and you are finding whatever kind of adult beverage you like the best, and you're having a long sit because you probably paid a lot for Chris Johnson, and you're not getting a return on investment. Nate Burleson, by the way, 10 points in week 1, 2 last week. I agree. There's just not that second receiver in Detroit that we expected. We thought Tyus Young was going to be it. I think Brandon Pettigrew has been a good guy. I think if you're getting 10 points from your tight end in fantasy, that's about what you expect, unless you have Graham or Gronk or something like that. This year, though, that tight end pool is so shallow. It's so weird. We could talk about that a little bit more, but I think if you're getting 10 to 15 points from your guy, I think that's pretty solid. I think Pettigrew is a good play there. Let's shift and talk about the running backs this year, right? So we came into this year and we knew Foster, we knew Rice, we knew McCoy were all going to be studs, and then all of a sudden, Fred Jackson goes down, and our guy C.J. Spiller has done something nobody's done since Jim Brown was a running back. And he's leading the league right now. He's got 55 fantasy points, but more importantly, he's got almost 300 yards rushing in 2 games. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns, and he got 5 catches for 72 yards.
And I think that, to explain in case anyone didn't know, that Jim Brown's stat is that he is the first player since Jim Brown to average 10 points per carry, or 10 yards per carry, 10 yards per carry over his first 2 games. For the first 2 games of the season. And, I mean, it's incredible what C.J. Spiller's managed to do. He got a great opportunity when Fred Jackson went down. I mean, there are some guys out there that I think were really predictable in fantasy football this year. I think Antonio Gates, for all the talk of, oh, this guy's healthy again, he looks great in preseason, he's super healthy. That dude made it half a game, and fantasy owners crapped their pants because it was the same old story from Gates that everyone tried to talk down. And Fred Jackson, too, he was hurt last year. He played a little bit more, but he was injured last year. Now he's injured again. I mean, it's like, how much longer can we keep believing in these? Like, where does the upside stop? And the injuries and being out of games just doesn't make it. I mean, it's the same question for Darren McFadden. Like, how long does that guy make it on a bad team before he's hurt again? Because they are trying to work the crap out of him.
It's heartbreaking because you draft a guy like Gates and you are buying into the fact that he is going to be healthy this year, right? When you draft him, you're expecting he's going to be healthy this year. I'm going to get 12 to 16 games out of him, and to last 1 game. Fred Jackson, the same thing. Now, the thing with Fred Jackson, I've loved Fred Jackson for a couple years because back when he was backing up Marshawn Lynch in Buffalo, back when Lynch was still there and Lynch got suspended for 4 games, and I picked him up just as a flyer, as a late-round flyer, and he had 100-yard rushings 3 of the first 4 games. I've always liked this guy. He's older. He's over 30. He doesn't have a lot of wear on his tires, which is why people keep buying into him. But, again, you're over 30. Your body's slowing down. It doesn't heal as fast. You're more fragile. I think Fred Jackson is going to be either the best thing or the worst thing to happen to C.J. Spiller. He's either going to be great because he's going to come back and take a few carries and just ensure C.J. Spiller, doesn't get overworked, doesn't run himself into the ground this year, or he's going to be the worst thing and come back, muddy the waters in the backfield in Buffalo. Chan Gailey is a guy who wants to win. He doesn't care about stats. He doesn't care about C.J. Spiller.
True.
C.J. Spiller's on pace to rush for 2,400 yards rushing, okay? I'm just saying. He's got 300 yards through 2 games. He's on pace for 2,400 yards. He's on pace for, 24 touchdowns. All right, he's going to start for me for the rest of my life, basically. But I think Fred Jackson is a guy, man. I was offered a trade for Fred Jackson today, right? And for a wide receiver, I have a ton of wide receiver depth. Yeah, I'm sure it was the same guy, right? And I can't convince myself. I have Spiller, and it's the idea of, do I want to handcuff Fred Jackson to C.J. Spiller? And I couldn't accept it at this time because I don't know what Fred Jackson will do. Is he going to come back and take over as number one? Are they just going to throw him back in there? And C.J. Spiller gets cut down? Is C.J. Spiller going to win the job here? I mean, 2 weeks he's looked fantastic. He's looked fantastic when he played at the end of last year. But Fred Jackson was still the starter this year when they came into the season. Or is he going to come back and we're going to see a timeshare, and neither of those guys are going to have a whole lot of value? I mean, the Bills are not a strong team. They can't afford to run full games, and they're going to have to throw if they get down. So Fred Jackson's a guy that kind of worries me. I don't know if I want him on my team just yet as a Spiller owner, but I think if the price is right, you might want to get him and stash him just in case something happens. I mean, Buffalo's a team that can run the ball. We've seen that. Fred Jackson was leading rushing last year.
Here's what I will say about it, though. I mean, and then I think we're safe to move on from Buffalo because what a terrible, terrible place. But
So true.
what we can say about it, what my prediction is Fred Jackson's going to come back to the Buffalo Bills. I think we're going to hear some rumors of them to potentially trying to trade that dude. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's going to come back. I think Chan Gailey's going to play the hot hand, which worries me because C.J. Spiller isn't Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. He will fumble the ball on occasion. He's got one fumble already this year. In that time, again, he's looking great, but he's already got a fumble. I think it's going to take C.J. Spiller messing up, and Fred Jackson's going to come in and run the ball again. And it's just they're going to go back and forth like that with whether it be injury or whether it be little mistakes here and there. But Chan Gailey's going to play the hot hand and sit down the guy who is not as hot at the moment, and that's just what you're going to have to deal with as a Jackson Spiller owner. The upside is huge. The upside is huge for those two guys, and I think once Jackson comes back, if you can leave him on your bench for a little while and be comfortable with that, you're going to get production out of him. I think right now you're trying to sell him too low because he is hurt and out for probably another at least week or two. You're just not going to get the value for him right now. It's going to take, and plus no one knows what's going to happen. I think we're not the only people that are feeling this way, that they're uncertain what's going to happen with this guy once he's back and what's going on with Spiller and what is up in Buffalo. Like I said, I think Chan Gailey's going to play the hot hand and cope with that as an owner.
What's the read on a guy like Reggie Bush, who's had 2 really good weeks back-to-back, 2 double-digit weeks, obviously had the huge week this week where he had 172 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 catches for 25. Is this a guy that you try to sell high on right now, or is this someone that, as a fantasy owner, you feel comfortable riding out for the rest of the season?
I think I'm doing a little math. So in our league, Reggie Bush last year was ranked at about the 12th running back. That's on a bad Miami team that had no idea. I mean, Matt Moore was their quarterback for a while. That's a guy that I'm a little bit higher on than others, not as a fantasy play in any way, but on pure football skill, I think Matt Moore's a little bit better than people give him credit for. Right now, Reggie Bush is ranked second. He's got almost 250 yards on the year, 2 touchdowns, 9 receptions, which, again, we're half-point PPR, so that's strong. 71 yards. I mean, he's behind C.J. Spiller a little bit in rushing, but he's also not fumbled. Now you have to consider also Reggie Bush just put up 173 yards in a game.
Right.
So that means his other game was about 68 points or 68 yards. He's not going to put up 173 yards a game every game. But I think if you're talking about a guy that's got decent upside, not a great team, he does have a rookie quarterback. They don't have any passing options. He's going to be a workhorse when they need to, and he can catch out of the backfield, obviously.
I'll tell you what, the fact that he was 12th last year in our league in fantasy as a running back was really surprising. So I think you see Reggie Bush this year. I think you're going to hold on to him for a little bit. Hope, his upcoming schedules against the Jets, because they have a pretty good run D, at Arizona, at Cincy, at Seattle, then his bye week. So he's got the next 4 games coming up. I think against some pretty tough defenses. Now he already had a pretty good game against Houston, who we know has a good defense. He caught 6 passes in that game. I think you're going to ride Reggie Bush for a little bit longer. I think the running back pool is just too shallow right now. His upside is too high. I think you're going to hang on to him. Somebody that I hate, and I've hated all offseason and continue to hate because I let him fall so far in our draft and just knew he was going to be a huge bust and wasn't, is Frank Gore, who's just been a stud this year. And I was wrong on him. Sam has reaped the benefits. He's starting Ray Rice and Frank Gore, who together are, the 4th and 5th running backs. in the league right now in terms of fantasy
Yeah,
scoring in the
I
league.
mean, talk about a team that is absolutely stacked, and that's a team that has Ray Rice drafted in the first round and Frank Gore drafted much later. I mean, I, it's
What do you
it's
do? What do you
it's my
do?
fault. You can't do anything, and there's just no way to have predicted that. I think, and you're looking at our league again, the fourth and fifth running backs right there, Ray Rice and Frank Gore, and one dude has them. And Frank Gore's points have not been all stacked in one game. He is averaging 17.5 points per game, 17.8 in the first, 17.5 the second.
Incredible.
He's averaging about 17.5 points per game. I mean, out of a running back, that's really good,
Absolutely.
especially out of a running back that people thought would be done on a team that people thought had no offense.
And I'll tell you what, that Niners team, I'm not the first person to say this, of course, and I don't take any credit. This is not some new fantastic insight. That's not why you're listening to us. This 49ers team is something special, man. They are fun to watch. Alex Smith looks like he's figured it out. In our league, Alex Smith is outscoring my boy, what's his name, Matt Stafford. He's got back-to-back 20-point games. And it looks like Alex Smith has figured out that defense has been impressive like we expected. And listen, not only does Vernon Davis have 3 touchdowns in 2 games so far, this guy who we all forgot about and love to make fun of, Michael Crabtree, Week 1, 7 catches for 76 yards. Week 2, 6 catches for 67 yards. He's almost fantasy relevant as a flex. Michael Crabtree in our 10-team league is almost relevant as a flex. Did you ever think we'd say that?
No, I don't think there's any way that that you start thinking Michael Crabtree in any talk like that. I mean, he's not the guy that you think of. You think Vernon Davis, you think Gore out of the backfield, you even think maybe Kendall Hunter. You do not
That's
think.
it, though. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the extent of what they have. Like, you just do not think Michael Crabtree as an option. I mean,
This
this
Niners team is tough. They're gritty, and they're going to work it out. Alex Smith looks pretty sharp. I can't believe I'm saying this about Alex Smith, but I picked him up today. I've got a bye week coming up in Week 5 for the Detroit Lions, Matt Stafford. I picked up Alex Smith. He's playing, I think, the Vikings in Week 5. I'm feeling pretty comfortable that he can get me about 20 points in that game, and I can't believe I'm saying that.
I mean, the Vikings have not been a great defensive team this year. Jared Allen's still trying to come alive. I think there's someone that we're forgetting in that conversation about their passing game who has been kind of surprising this year.
Don't say it.
And the name I'm going to say is Mario Manningham.
Oh, Manningham. Okay. So I thought you were going to say straight cash, homie, Randy Moss, and I was about to shut this thing down.
I would like to, but I think Manningham, and his stats aren't impressive. 4 receptions for 29 in the first game, a long of 11, 3 receptions for 28 in the second with a yard rush. I think Mario Manningham is going to provide excitement, but he's also a quick guy that's got to take pressure off. Some people have said Randy Moss is not able to take the top off a defense. I think he's a red zone threat still, which is going to open up some options for Michael Crabtree. Manningham is there to take some pressure off, but I think you just have to, I think you're right. I think I was going down a path and I got down it and I realized that the path I was headed down is a dead end. You're just absolutely right. Michael Crabtree has stepped up this year. He has definitely stepped up his game to take some of the pressure off Alex Smith and off Vernon Davis to allow that team to be good. And I think he is a solid flex option. You don't think that
during the bye weeks. I mean, wide receivers really deep this year. There's a lot of value, especially in PPR. Guys like Danny Amendola are great starts. Brandon LaFell is going to be a good start moving forward. But Michael Crabtree is a guy to keep an eye on. The last running back that I want to discuss is a guy that I drafted. He came into the league this year. A lot of uncertainty. He's a rookie, Trent Richardson. A lot of uncertainty. He would have fallen really far in our draft, but I was looking for a running back at that pick. This was in the second round. I needed a running back. All the ones I liked were gone. I took a flyer on him. Week 1, 19 rushes. He had about a 2-yard per carry average coming off that knee scope. I was really worried. Benched him. 30 points last week. Trent Richardson going forward. That was against the Cincinnati Bengals team, which I don't know if we know yet if that Bengals defense is good or not. I mean, they played the Ravens. They got blown out by the Ravens, but this Cleveland team kind of held their own. Is Trent Richardson going to be a guy you trust going forward? He's got Buffalo coming up next, then going to be at Baltimore, at the Giants, and then the Bengals again. I kind of like Trent Richardson. I think he's the feature guy in that offense. What are your thoughts?
I think you're right. As someone who watches probably more Browns games than most Browns fans, just due to Yeah, my fiance being a Browns fan, we tend to watch more Browns games than probably most people would like. Um, no, that the Browns have been a good defense, but that's not the important part. Brandon Weeden, the first game, looked awful, and because of that, everyone knew what to expect, and that was Trent Richardson running the ball. Trent Richardson or Brandon Weeden bounced back last year. He was over 300 yards, didn't throw a pick. He looked decent. Some of their wide receivers came alive, and it opened up the running lanes for Trent Richardson. And chicken or egg, was it Richardson running the ball pretty hard that opened the lanes for the passing game, or was it vice versa? Honestly, it doesn't matter because Richardson had a good game. Do I think he's going to get 30 points a week? No, but I think he's got that potential again.
Sure.
You look at just looking at some stats, teams that he's got to play this year. They've got to play the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens currently ranked 20th in the NFL against the run. They've got to play the Buffalo Bills.
So we'll see, but yeah, that's after 2 weeks.
True, but I mean they've allowed some rushes, and Ray
Lewis is not an elite guy anymore, and Terrell Suggs has gone there, and that's big. True. But you got to be afraid of Nata.
But you're looking, you've got to worry about those guys. But I think another thing to keep in mind is that one of Richardson's touchdowns was out of the backfield, and he's going to be a valuable safety valve for Brandon Weeden. He is going to be a guy that can do some swing routes, and will get you probably some ticky-tack yards if you're in a PPR league. I think he's going to be not supremely helpful. I think he's a decent pass catcher. I don't think he's as good as someone like a Darren Sproles, who's a totally different story. But
we're going to go next level. This is going to be we're going Deep Vee on this, okay? I'm taking this next level. I'm looking beyond the statistics. I actually watched this guy run this weekend and last weekend. He was on my fantasy team. I wanted to see. I didn't watch him much in college, to be honest. I saw him in Alabama a few times. Of course, he looked good. He was such a stud. He was a Heisman candidate guy. But in week one, coming off that knee scope, he left a lot of yards on the field. He was getting up to the line. He lacked that explosive burst off his cuts, and was led to a 2 yard per carry average, which made me concerned. This last week I watched his highlights. I mean, he looked good. He looked really quick. He looked like he had that burst back, that speed back. I'm feeling a lot better about my Trent Richardson pick. I think I'm going to start my running backs going forward with Spiller and Richardson and DeMarco Murray. I think I'm going to feel really good about that.
I think you can, and I think Trent Richardson right now is a top 10 guy. He's number 6 in our league ranking and running backs ranking, and I think honestly that's about. If this team keeps going the way it is, and they're able to make some plays, the Browns may not win a lot of games. They have a really tough schedule, and being in a tough division, Trent Richardson is going to get work. He is the guy there. Montario Hardesty had has fallen off the face of the earth.
Is there another guy on the Browns that you're ever going to start in fantasy football this year?
No. Trent Richardson is the only fantasy player from the Browns you're going to start.
Yeah, but that's all you need to know.
Be a viable fantasy option as a running back 2, maybe a mid-level running back 2 for the rest of the year. You can.
That's all you need to know about that, right? It's a one-man show. If Richardson's healthy and continues, I think he's going to be fine. All right, our final segment. Oh, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We have segments, and this one is almost sponsored, right? This is, say it with me, Jimmy. Chex Mix Bold Party Mix prediction. Yes. Oh, we're gonna get our bold prediction here on. Brought to you by the fine folks at Chex Mix.
Not officially brought by the fine folks at Chex Mix, but
that's it.
I will buy Chex Mix if they sponsor us. I promise.
Okay, we're going to get that sponsorship. I like the bold party mix. Anyways, Jimmy, let me hear your bold predictions, your AFC bold predictions for week 2.
My biggest prediction for week 2 is that the New England Patriots are due for a bounce back. We talked at length about Tom Brady and how weak he has been. I think they're facing the Baltimore Ravens. I believe, if I'm right, let me double check this, but the Ravens are.
You think a Tom Brady bounce back versus that Ravens defense? Is this because you're a Steelers fan and you just hate the Ravens?
That plays.
There's a little bit of bias here, right?
25% into it, but also consider that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick do not lose back-to-back games. The Ravens secondary is still not. They're still a little suspect. They are improved from last year. They're missing Terrell Suggs. Their pass rush has been pretty good because you always have to count for Haloti Ngata. That dude is still a beast. Ray Lewis has said that he is going to crush anybody that comes in his zone. this year
Yeah,
for
Ray
being
Lewis
outstate
saying
them.
that was scary 10 years ago. Ray
Yeah,
Lewis
but the
saying
dude
that
that was
now,
saying that is still scary.
that doesn't really even make me that scared. I'm more worried he's going to – never mind. I shouldn't say that. That's offensive.
I think you –
Ray Lewis does not really scare me at this point as an inside linebacker.
Well, let's just think about this from a fantasy perspective. They have allowed some rushing yards, and I think Stephen Ridley was underutilized last week against Arizona. I think Arizona's front seven's really good and stopped them. I think Stephen Ridley's due for a bounce back, maybe not as big as week one, but he's due for more yards. I think if you're right and Wes Welker gets work, they've got to start factoring Welker into the game plan with Hernandez out. If that's the case, then it's very possible that that Wes Welker picks up that team. I think there's a bounce back. I think what's key, and from a fantasy perspective, you were going to start this guy anyway, but I think Rob Gronkowski's due for about a 2-touchdown game. I do want to point out the Baltimore Ravens against the pass this year, 26th in the league, tied with the New Orleans Saints. So their defense is not as scary as they have been before. Their defense
all right. Okay. Patriots to bounce back, big win over the Ravens. Gronkowski 2 touchdowns. Okay.
Welker big game. Ridley big game. Gronkowski 2 touchdowns.
Aaron Hernandez sits my bench, accumulates 0 points for the second week in a row. I hate him.
And AJ, let's go to the other side of the coin. Let's go to the NFC and let's talk about your party mix.
All right, my bold prediction for the NFC. I got to go with my boy. I got to go with Matt Stafford, okay? He's going up against the Tennessee Titans, right? I think Stafford finds his mojo this week. I think he bounces back. I think he gets in the groove against this Tennessee Titans team that is not really that impressive. They've been played tough and beaten by a couple teams here. I think Calvin Johnson has a nice week. He's been held out of the end zone. Calvin Johnson, this guy, the first 3 or 4 games last year, I think the first 3 games he had 2 touchdowns a game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he was on crazy pace last year.
I think he finds the end zone. I think Stafford throws for about 3 or 4 touchdowns. This Tennessee Titans team has given up 34 points to the Patriots, 38 points to the Chargers.
Yep.
They're not good against the pass. They're not good in real life. Chris Johnson is terrible. They're bad on offense. Jake Locker, Nate Washington, both a little dinged up. Young guys. I'm calling it Stafford 4 touchdown passes against the Tennessee Titans. That was either the smartest thing I've ever said or the dumbest, and I'm going to lose again next week. But I'm calling it. I'm going with my boy, Staffy, 4 touchdowns against that Tennessee Titans team. He's going to get his mojo back.
In Nashville. Going to go to Nashville and get his mojo back.
Yeah, he's going to put on his boots. He's going to put on his cowboy boots. He's going to walk in there with his chubby baby face and his weird, awkward body, and he's going to just hurl into Calvin Johnson. I think
another person to watch Brandon Pettigrew. Consider that some dude that I've never heard of before got 3 touchdowns for the Chargers last week.
Yeah, what was up with that? Dante Rosario,
who is a guy I have heard of before, but in Gates' absence, he had 3 touchdowns. I think Brandon Pettigrew is another great must-start this week. If you have 2 tight ends, unless you've got Gronk and Graham and Pettigrew as your backup, I think you have to start Brandon Pettigrew this week against the Tennessee Titans. So with that in mind, AJ, I think we'll about do it for the podcast that has no name as of right now. The Deep Vees
podcast.
Hashtag Deep Vees if you have a better idea for a name. Again, I'm Jimmy Hostetler at Ducal J Dean.
I'm AJ McGraw at Ducal AJM. Hit us up on Twitter. Give us a follow. A lot of fantasy football talk about the league. You can also check out our league at Ducal Crown Fantasy Football. .com. We got a lot of content up there. All of our managers write posts, put stuff up there, go about the league as if you didn't have enough to do during your day. I know when you're not trying to do those memos, not trying to fill out those spreadsheets, jump over to our website, check it out. We'll be back next week. On behalf of my boy Jimmy, I'm AJ. We'll see you guys later.
Woo.